it was just my constant fear and anxiety about something happening to him. And so I was holding on too tight.
Welcome back to the Business of Happiness podcast. I am your host, Taryn McCarthy, and this is a big deal day for me. I am so excited to have you joining me here today. This is a wonderful interview that we're going to be having with a phenomenal human being. I just can't say enough about her. I have grown to love this woman so much. She is such an incredible human and is making such a big difference in our community, impacting people's lives in just a beautiful way. I can't wait to share that with you. And before we get started, I want to say thank you to all of you for joining me last week on our two-part 3 permissions of self-empowerment. It means so much to me to share that information with you, and I hope you found value in it. This evening, we're going to find even more value learning from this phenomenal entrepreneur. And then next week, I hope you'll join me again as we talk about the language we use when we're talking to ourselves. So stay tuned for next week. It's another power episode. And without further ado, I am so excited to introduce to you a wonderful mom, an incredible friend. She herself is an inspirational speaker. She is the CEO, founder, and super coach of Roar with Laughter. She's a personal trainer at Roots and Springs Studio. She has been a marriage and family therapist for a couple decades, dare I say. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is Pasha Marlowe. Welcome, Pasha. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Taryn. What a wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm pumped up now. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you. I just want the world to know more about you, and I want people to be able to find the incredible inspiration that you have to offer. And I know that people have just gained so much from knowing you in the past. But tell us a little bit about yourself, please. We want to know who you are.
Oh, thank you, Taryn. I appreciate that. I am Pasha Marlowe, and like Taryn said, I love that the first thing she said is mom, because I am a fierce mama bear at heart. I always say that first as well, because it's so much a part of who I am. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm also a marriage and family therapist, a holistic personal trainer, and most recently a laughter and comedy coach and inspirational speaker. And I have to say, I've reinvented myself several times throughout my life, but I think this one in my 50th year is my favorite part yet. It's my favorite chapter so far. So I'm really excited.
You can tell. I mean, you can just see the passion that you have behind it and the passion that you bring to it. So I think that just speaks for itself. You know, I think one of the things that I love most about you, that I really value, is when I first met you, is recognizing this incredible courage that you have. That's what I saw it as. And when you say you've just reinvented yourself and pivoted during the past 2 years or so, that is the power that I just have so much awe of in you. Where does this courage come from? I mean, I'll give you a little story just so that you all can catch you up with who Pasha Marlowe is. But when I first met you, you just moved to Maine a couple months before. And Pasha didn't have a huge group of friends here, but she was having this big birthday, as you alluded to. You were turning 50. And you just created a birthday party for yourself with a ton of friends. And I was honored to be invited. But when I got there, I realized none of us really knew each other. And you made a kick-butt party that we just had so much fun at. And I remember leaving there thinking, oh my gosh, she put this thing together. You wanted a big party with a ton of friends. You made it happen. This ability to just find what you want and take it from life. It's that courageous part of you that I just admire so much. Where does this come from?
Thank you. It was quite intentional and brave. That was my 49th birthday party, actually.
Oh,
inspiration. I was already prepping for my 50th birthday party, which was supposed to be even bigger and grander this year, but that's a different story in 2020. But right before my 49th birthday, in all honesty, was in a very dark place in my life. And this has happened several times in my life where I've just felt like I was kind of just pushed down by traumas and heartaches and bad luck and, other people coming into my life and being toxic. And I just felt like I needed to really take control of my life more. And I've moved 18 times. This is my 18th move.
Wow.
And so I'm quite accustomed to changing and being resilient and finding a new friend circle. But this time I decided right before that party, and you were in this, I was like, I'm just going to change this all up. I'm going to become friends with and invite and get to know the fiercest, bravest, most confident, most successful, kindest women I've ever met. And of course, I would go onto Facebook and stalk them. And then I would 10 to 20 times a month last summer, the summer before my 49th, I would meet people in coffee shops and I would sit down and talk with them. And I'd become their friend. And then the 49th birthday party came, and a lot of those women, I know you didn't know them, I hardly knew them. Some of them I had met on the beach like 2 days prior to the party. It's just if I was drawn to somebody and felt like I want this person, this kind of energy in my life, I invited them to the party. And I think it ended up being 20 women, and they're all still friends, of course.
Yes.
And it was a really fun night. But it just allowed me to realize that it's possible to not just manifest something, but create it. And I had to really do it myself and put it out there. Like, what do I want? What do I really, really want? It wasn't just a party. I wanted a new circle of friends. I wanted a tribe. I wanted a community. As for where that came from, it's strange to say, but I think it just came from being consistently in a place where I felt like joy and community and luck were not in the cards for me. I feel like for 49 years, I had the story I was telling myself was, I'm just going to have to get used to struggle and chaos and people hurting me and losing people and things, because that's what kept happening. And of course, that's what will keep happening if that's what you invite into your life. And so I had realized that I need to change it. Right? I needed to really make a change myself, and I did. And so, yeah.
Was there a catalyst moment? Was there a moment that really spoke to you before that, realizing that you were in control and that you really had to take control? Was there a moment that spoke to you, or was it just kind of a building over time?
It felt like a building over time. But I remember feeling in the summer before my 49th, so this was last summer, about a year and a half ago, that no matter how nice the day was, no matter how pleasant my friends were, how kind my family was being, or how successful my work was, or how much people said they admired me, I just did not feel the inner joy and freedom, outside of happiness. I just really felt like something was in the way. I felt like I was under a dark cloud, and I was getting very depressed. I was anxious. I was having panic attacks. I've been an insomniac since 2001, but the sleep was even worse. And I was just feeling like almost like rock bottom. And I was like, there's just nothing else I could do other than start clawing my way up and out. And I did it madly and fiercely and bravely and purposefully.
So, that's something that's very scary for a lot of people, to kind of be so far out of their comfort zone. And especially at a place when you feel that much defeat, when you feel so much struggle and so defeated in life, and you really can't feel happiness when it seems like you should be able to.
Right.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's in a similar situation, who just feels like they can't be that brave because they don't even have any legs to stand on?
What helped me pull myself out of it was looking to other people, particularly women in my new friend circle, and allowing those friends, new or old, to mirror my brilliance, to mirror my radiance, to ask them, like, what do you like about me? Like, what do I do well? If I was going to do a TED talk, what would I talk about? If you wanted to see a movie about me, what would the story be? Like, I forget who I am. And asking people to mirror that for you, and then asking for help. And I did not learn that for 49 years. And I had to learn it the hard way. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute, because of course the world fell apart even more right after I decided everything was fine now. But I feel like I really needed to ask for help. And the way I asked for help was to do the scariest thing I could think of at the time. The most, unique and different from who I was prior, which was joining the Rockstar Camp with Megan Jo Wilson. And it was just completely out of my comfort zone. I thought it would be fun. And little did I know, I would greet myself at my own door and be like, oh, by the way, you can't sing, not because you can't sing, but because you don't feel free in your own voice to express yourself. Oh, and you can't dance because you're too stuck in depression and heaviness to even feel in your body. And realizing that I wasn't easy to laugh. I wasn't playful. I had a hard time playing. I had no idea how stuck I was in a place where I couldn't play or laugh until I surrounded myself with these badass women. Sorry, I don't know what the rules of your podcast are.
No, bring it on. Bring it on.
And I won't say all the words, but they were using really colorful language in this group. And I'm like, oh, and I'm boring, and I'm a prude, and I'm conservative, and I'm like Holly Hobby. Like, I really looked at myself around these dynamic women. I was like, I don't know if I like myself like this. I really don't. I don't want to be this way. And that really was a catalyst for me.
I think you touched on some really key points there. And that is, when you feel so down, to be able to borrow courage from other people, even if you don't find it in yourself, but find someone who has it and then borrow that from her. And integral in that is surrounding yourself with strength and with community. I think that's so beautiful. And that sounds like exactly what you found in the Rockstar Camp. So then tell us a little bit how that influenced you further in terms of feeling the power of community and other women around you really lifting you up.
Yes. Well, lo and behold, the moment I thought everything's cool, I have a community, I had myself a party, I have new friends, I'm going to sing in a show, I'm going to do something. This is going to be a great year. My 49 into 50th year is going to be fun and playful. And the universe is funny, because right away, my son was very ill. It was gradual. I didn't realize how ill he was until in the midst of this Rockstar Camp. And he became so ill, he couldn't go to school for a year, couldn't practically walk on his own, toilet on his own. He hasn't slept on his own in a year and a half. He's still in a place of physical and emotional pain. And it was as if the universe was showing me my greatest fear, which absolutely it was. Because if you get below, like, or behind the sadness and the depression, the anxiety and the insomnia I was feeling, it was a relentless fear of me losing my little boy for no reason. I had no reason to fear this other prior to him getting sick. It was just my constant fear and anxiety about something happening to him. And so I was holding on too tight. And somebody told me my cord was too tight. Like, the cord between us is too short and too tight, and it needs to be severed. And I didn't like anything that medium had to say at the time, but now reflecting on it a year and a half later, I can understand. But Jamie got sick, and I faced losing my favorite person in the world, and I faced also him being in a place physically and mentally in so much pain that he was suicidal himself. And so in facing my own son's potential death, I had to choose life. I had to choose the opposite of grief and sorrow, which is where we were. And we chose humor, and we chose comedy, and we chose laughter, because it felt like the last resort, and it felt like the scariest and bravest thing we could do at that time.
That's so incredible to me. I mean, just hearing that story, it sounds like, once again, the word that just keeps coming to me is courage, that you just have to be so courageous to cut that cord, or even imagine cutting that cord a little bit when he is ill, you know? And I
Mhm.
think that's something that so many of our listeners could relate to, is that feeling of success means nothing as a mom if your baby is in pain. It doesn't mean anything. In fact, you have no success if you're losing that most precious person in your life, as you had called him. And
Mhm.
I think, once again, I'm just so impressed with the courage that you had to do it, and then the courage to see the beauty beyond it, because how has that positively affected you now, having made that courageous leap?
Mhm. Well, interestingly, we're not in much different of a place than we were a year and a half ago. He's still in the physical pain, but
Mm,
emotionally and mentally, which was the biggest battle because we needed him to like stay in the game and
mhm,
want to be here. Um, we have noticed shifts in my mood, in my ability to lift his spirits, in his ability to lift his own spirits through
mm,
humor and laughter and comedy. And we've really come to a place where for both of us we've needed to step away from each other and give each other the not just the space but the independence to thrive. Like he's before I wouldn't even leave his side, I was scared to. And he's still hardly in school, of course, because of COVID, so we're with each other pretty much 24/7, and we mindfully take some time apart, and I tell him about my work and my passion and my mission that has nothing to do with him, and he tells me about his. And in doing that, we're healing throughout all that. And we're coming to a place where we're um emotionally understanding what it is, our purpose in the world, together and apart. It's really important, and it's hard to talk about me without him, so it's kind of ironic, but we're very much intertwined in this journey because I'm his mama and he's still sick.
mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know one person that you speak often about, in on your Facebook page, and often when you're interviewing people. And I've just seen a couple of Facebook posts that you mention Glennon Doyle, and I know she speaks about pain as a traveling professor. And she
Mhm.
says that pain can come to your door and you can welcome him in and learn from him, and then allow him to leave again and keep
Mhm.
going on to the next person. So how has pain for you and Jamie been that traveling professor in terms of lessons that you might have learned? And or does that even seem fair,
Mhm.
especially in light of physical pain? Does physical pain seem like something you can learn from, or does that just seem cruel to imagine your child being in pain being
Mhm.
something you need to learn from?
Yeah. It did seem cruel in the beginning for
Mm,
sure. Obviously we learn resilience and persistency through needing to deal with the physical and emotional pain. But then we became exceedingly empathetic and compassionate to others experiencing similar pain. And he was 11 when he first got sick. He's almost 13 next weekend, and he has become a healer. He's the healer in his friends groups. He's the healer with his teachers. He makes crystal necklaces and heals people who are emotionally
mm,
suffering. He
mm.
wants to, and he believes he's a shaman, by the way. I know this could be an
Oh,
entire other podcast, but
yeah.
he believes that in his deepest, darkest grieving, he received gifts that allow him to be even more connected to people and animals and the earth. And he feels like his empathy is just taken to another level where he feels like he can hear people's thoughts, hear animals' thoughts, and he has a sensitivity to them and a maturity now that
Mm,
has come from his pain. And he says it every day very intentionally that he feels like he's here to understand his pain so he can help others through theirs.
wow. It reminds me of another tenet, that your purpose comes from your pain.
Yeah.
And does that seem to be true for you and true for Jamie?
Yeah, I can't imagine I can't imagine what work I would do that didn't connect to the vulnerability of my past traumas and pain. It doesn't feel meaningful. And because I've been through a lot, and because I'm a radical truth teller now, and really because I face death and kind of fearless now, I'm just willing to talk about anything and go anywhere with anybody in any conversation. So I feel like we're in a really good position to hold the space for people, especially this year. Last year was harder for me than this year. So now I can help people this year manage
Wow.
the uncertainty and the fear and the angst of not knowing what's coming next. I've come to thrive in that
Wow.
creative chaos.
I know I saw that as part of your mission on Roar with Laughter is you even talk about the rupture preceding the rapture, that almost like it's a necessity. Do you think it's a necessity in order to feel happiness and find happiness, to identify the painful part? Do you think that we all need pain in order to feel happiness?
I can't imagine a life without loss. So I feel like we
Mm.
all have pains and heartaches. We're all going to lose people. We're all going to go through challenges and transitions. And so I feel like this might be the German part in me. Like, life is going to be hard sometimes. So
Mhm.
yes, there's going to be some rupture. And I don't know if you necessarily need the pain to feel the joy, but it certainly allows you to appreciate the joy
Yeah.
more if you've had the pain. If you've been to those dark places, you appreciate the light for sure. And to keep inviting the light and not dwell on the darkness
Right.
was part of my journey. But yeah, we go from rupture to rapture, and I love those two words. And it is definitely a journey and a process that I went through, and I encourage all my clients, whether it's my holistic personal training clients or my Roar with Laughter clients, to move mindfully and from rupture to rapture by figuring out like what it is you want your life to look like, and
Mm.
alchemizing your pains into pleasures, alchemizing your traumas into lessons, finding the gifts in imperfection, and all the things where we used to feel it was holding us back or making it not possible for us to flourish. Like, what if those were the lessons that allowed us to actually be in the perfect place with the perfect mindset to propel ourselves forward and lift others up as well?
Absolutely.
First the pain, then the rising. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's interesting because I couldn't agree with you more in terms of allowing yourself to dream for what you really wish for, allowing yourself permission to have a dream beyond the pain. And I think that integral in that is a sense of worthiness. And I think so many people, especially women who are spreading themselves very thin, especially women who are in the service profession, healthcare, really giving of themselves, constantly wanting to support others and letting themselves kind of um, dilute themselves as moms and giving to their children and giving to their businesses and giving to their careers. There's a very big part of women who don't feel worthy of a bigger dream or a dream of happiness. Was there ever a time in yourself where you recognized that in yourself, that like not feeling worthy of that dream?
I grew up feeling not worthy of success or joy. I definitely struggled with it again for 49 years. And in the shift of choosing life in the face of death, I decided to become visible and take up more space, figuratively and literally. Like, coming from the world of fitness and yoga and personal training, there's there's actually a sense of like the smaller the better. Obviously, physically, like there's this thought that you have to be smaller and thinner to be better or more beautiful. And I was really fighting that, because
Mm.
not only with the illness, but in the sense that I really wanted to become more visible and seen and heard and known. And I didn't want to play small anymore. I didn't even want to be small anymore. I wanted to take up space and be heard. And I wanted, and all of a sudden, like, I wanted my platforms to be bigger. So now I don't mind going on live Facebook. I don't mind talking to TED Talk speakers or talking about people doing a podcast or doing a show or performing, because to me it's life-giving and freeing, and there's no one-way liberation. I'm certain that when I'm up on stage or presenting, that somebody else is like, I wonder if I could do that. No, I don't have that in me. Well, she didn't have it in me for 49
Right.
years. She did. So I think there's a lesson in that to jump in. And I know it does take courage, but I think the option was that I was disappearing.
Mm.
I just wasn't me. I wasn't enjoying myself. I wasn't enjoying the company I kept. I wasn't what you think about at night when you can't sleep is often this kind of self-loathing and feeling lack of self-worth and self-love or unbelonging and all those things. And so I really had to fight my way out of it. And
So do you have a daily practice that helps you with that self-love? I know self-love is another big part of what you do and about what you speak about in terms of healing from these traumas. Is there some advice you can give our listeners in terms of kind of incorporating that and building that skill? Because it's a skill. Like you said, so many of us lose that skill at a very young age. How do we build that back up again? How do we learn to love ourselves again?
Yeah, I call it heroic self-love, because I think it's like we turn, I'll say for me, 50 and menopause has been, thank goodness, funny, because otherwise uncomfortable and hard.
Yeah.
So my daily practice is I wake up in the morning. I'd love to tell you that I meditate and watch the sunrise, but I don't. I have come to wake up. I do some writing. I drink some coffee, and well, first I do lemon juice, lemon water, and then I do my coffee, and I write, and I watch comedy. And I know this sounds like,
wow.
Honestly, if I'd heard somebody tell me this a year ago, I would have been like, that sounds shallow or not like intellectual or meaningful. And that's because I hadn't watched really good intellectual, witty comedy before. I'm thinking off the top of my head, people like Hannah Gatsby. She's an amazing Netflix special. My favorite right now is Tig Notaro. Do you know Tig? She's doing, I always have to say, oh yeah, Tig. I know Tig. I know Tig and Brene, and I know Liz and Glenn, and they're my friends. Tig does comedy about losing her mother and illness and cancer and heartache and loss. And it's not, set up punchline stand-up comedy. It's storytelling, and it's true, and it's authentic, and it's real. And every time I watch a special like that, or a comedy routine, or a show that somebody like her puts on, I just feel seen. I feel this sense of relatability and connection. And I feel like I'm meant to be in this world because somebody else understands how you can walk into a doctor's office like Jamie and I did at Boston Children's and have them say, your son's going to be in chronic pain and have chronic illness for the rest of his life. And have him look at me and go, Mama, I think I lost my childhood. And I'm like, it was too much. And yet, looking back, we're like, that was the worst bedside manner we've ever seen. That was terrible messaging. They didn't sugarcoat that at all. And we laugh about it. It was horrible at the time. With time, it's like comedy. There's this formula. It's time plus tragedy equals comedy, or time plus pain equals comedy. I mean, it takes a little bit of time and perspective to get to a place where you can laugh about a trauma.
Yeah.
But so healing to take our power back.
Yeah.
And so Jamie has become this, now almost 13, like a fierce advocate for his own health and well-being. Like when he walks into a doctor's office now, not only does he go in and ask for what he wants, and if they say, are you comfortable? He'll say if he's not, which I think is so brave, is the temperature okay? Does this feel okay? Do these things up all around your body, all the wires, are any of them poking? Or if something gets too hot or too cold, depending on the treatment, he'll say it. He'll interrupt the doctor during a conversation to say, I'm sorry, that's getting too hot, or please take that off. It's getting too hot. And I've seen him, I find that to be self-love as well, just advocating for ourselves and asking for what we need, and then demanding that we're worthy of that comfort and we're worthy of being heard.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so beautiful. I think it's really something special to be able to find that one thing that speaks to you. And it seems like you really have found something that speaks to you. And then you took that beautiful passion and shared it with other people and unpacked it and figured out what it was that was so healing to you and supported other people around you. I mean, that's just such a beautiful marriage of passion and purpose. I love it. I love it. And so many people have benefited from that from you. Did you always know that this was what you were going to do? Is this something you've always looked for, or did it just kind of fall upon you?
I thought I was going to be a holistic personal trainer for the rest of my life. The end. Love that. I was a marriage and family therapist. Love that, but I wanted to do something more preventative. When I went into the holistic personal trainer, yoga, fitness field, it was positive. I love it. I still do it, by the way. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
standing here in my studio, I still do that work. But the part of me that wasn't seen or heard, I was missing. I was like, what is missing? I'm missing play. I'm missing joy. I'm missing laughter. Yeah, I never laugh. I don't laugh? Why don't I laugh? And then I started researching like a dork, researching laughter, researching
Mm.
humor, researching comedy. And of all things, I came across Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning about the Holocaust. And he said that,
The
and he
least funny thing possible.
like, this is like the darker side of me, like really wants to relate to people's pain. But
Mm,
even in that book, he wrote that the people who survived the concentration camps are those that still found something to laugh about with each
yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And the community and the collaboration and the relatability and just surviving something like that. It said, okay, so in here, we are trying to survive this illness. And I said, I wonder if we could laugh about it. So I would say, Jamie, let's find something really funny about the hospital visit today. I know there'll probably be moments where it's uncomfortable. I'm sure it's not going to all be
Mm,
pleasant, but let's just find the funniest thing about it. And if you go in with the intention, like anything, if you go in with the intention of finding the funny, you're going to find the funny.
yeah.
And I started to do this with obviously Jamie and I, and then I started to bring it into my holistic personal training appointments. Like, let's find the funny in exercise and even yoga and menopause and the noises we make
Ah,
and the things that are challenging and
mm,
becoming an older woman and all the things. And people were releasing and changing and transforming quickly. So then in my life coaching, and this is an entrepreneur in me, I was like, how can I bring this message to people? How can
mm,
I package this into a program, but not just a program, an experience? And I thought, what would be the most fun way for me to make a living? That's what I did. I said, what is the most beautiful, fun, exciting, crazy, adventurous thing I could do? And I was like, stand-up comedy sounds crazy. I couldn't think of
mm,
anything crazier, anything
mm,
more out of my comfort zone, anything more fun.
mm.
So I just started to do that. And then I started to develop this program, Roar with Laughter. And so for 8 weeks, people come in and we talk about rupture. We talk about all the stuff that stands in our way, all of our limiting beliefs. And then we start to find the funny in our day-to-day practice, in our
Mm.
day-to-day lives, even in 2020. And then we start to decide what it is we really, really want in life. And we start to ask for it and claim our power, claim our voice, claim our desires, claim our
Mm.
sexuality, claim our pleasure. And then we start to transform that into a comedy routine through song or poetry or movement or puppets or whatever pleases the
Mm.
person who's in it, their own expression of comedy. And then they perform it live on stage and they're seen, truly seen in their most vulnerable moments. And they're often telling secrets. A lot of women are revealing their names, their addictions, their greatest traumas through comedy. And in taking their power back in the performance, they go on to not just do other performances and TED Talks and one woman shows, but they go on to ask for raises, leave
Wow.
jobs and marriages that weren't serving them, finding other ways they can claim their voice and their power. And that's the transformational part that I love to see.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I do just have to ask you, I think that we recognize the beauty and the freedom that laughter and comedy can give us. And especially it's that recognition and that honesty, like allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to identify the pain and talk about it and release it, right? Because I think probably that's a big part of it is so often we're um, keeping it at bay or stuffing it down, and just by acknowledging it and laughing about it you can let it go, right? I think that's probably a big part of the healing. But what do you think about the the mask that laughter can also give, or the mask that comedy or self-deprivation can also give? I think it can be freeing on one hand, but is there a part of it that could be kind of hiding it more or mocking it or putting yourself down more and actually making you feel worse about yourself?
Yes, so glad you asked about that because there's a lot of research on this as well.
Mm,
In taking, because one of my passions, of course, is suicide prevention now, and
mhm,
specifically with teens and young adults. And so they have done research on teens and young adults watching comedy and choosing to laugh their way through it. But
mhm,
if they choose the kind of humor that's self-deprecating and mocks people, mocks themselves, or is mean to others, it increases the likelihood of them continuing the suicidal
mm,
ideation versus the type of comedy that would be, whether it's physical comedy or comedy that's about everyday occurrences, or comedy with like word games or puns or obviously a million different ways um, to express humor. But you're absolutely right that in the case of self-deprecating humor, or humor that hurts, or roasting, like
mhm,
a lot of the teens right now, I'm noticing with Jamie and his friends that there's kind of this, they tease each other and they kind of roast each other, and sometimes it feels like name calling, and sometimes
mhm,
it starts to feel like bullying, and I'm right there in the room and we stop that conversation. And he said, well, they're laughing, they might not be hurting. And I said, well, let's look at it from the other perspective and think about them internalizing it, and it hurting their feelings, and then not being able to say that
mm,
it's hurtful, or them just wanting to not be confrontational. And so I'm trying to teach him to be really sensitive to that so that he can advocate for others as well. But yeah, I think that's really important. The different types of humor. I mean, there's terrible, misogynistic,
mhm,
sexist, crude comedy out there that I do not at all enjoy.
mm, mm,
Comedy that perpetuates racism.
mm.
There's harmful comedy out there, um, and there's exceedingly progressive, witty, intellectual comedy, like I was referring to with Hannah Gadsby and Tig Notaro, especially.
Mm, mm, mm. So what is it? What is that fine line? How do you know the difference as you're coaching your clients through it? Because I know um, you've had clients from all over the world. You've had different cultural
Yes.
influences. So culturally, comedy and humor can look very different from one person to another. So how do you help your clients find that line where it's really healing and transformative, as opposed to perpetuating that negativity or making you feel worse about yourself?
Yes. We call each other out
Mm,
on our stuff all the time. The other day, one of the assignments I give is find a comedian you like, get the transcript of their comedy special, and then perform it, so that just so you can get a sense of somebody else's pace or tone or style. And just try it on, because you might not think you're, a
ah,
sarcastic or flat comedian. You're going to try it. And in doing that, there was this pause and hesitancy in our group, or can we copy or imitate somebody, a comedian of a different race, even if our intention is to learn their style, learn their pace. And a few people in the group were really nervous, even if it never went public, even if it was never in performance, just trying to figure out what is, now that we know more, do better, now that we know better, do
mm,
better, especially in this culture right now, in this year, all that we're learning and unlearning.
mm,
And so I called upon, because thankfully I went to theater school on scholarship for college way back when. And so I have all these delightful, professional, successful actors and directors and playwriters and screenwriters in my back pocket. And they keep
Wow.
to the practices, they come to our rehearsals and they talk to us about how we can
Mm.
create change and be part of the change through our comedy. And so, yeah, we just keep learning. We keep
Mm.
trying to make sure that we're being as honest and ethical and fair and courageous in our comedy as we are in our life. And a lot of the people who join the program are they're all leaders in their own right. Some of them are social activists, some of them are authors, trauma specialists. So they're right in it in terms of wanting to create change on a broader, even political scale. And so, yeah, finding a way to make the comedy a learning experience is really important to me.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if I remember your exact question.
No, I think it's always a challenge. And I think that's where lots of people become very fearful to be courageous, is that they're afraid that they're going to make a mistake.
Yes.
Exactly as you're saying right now. And I think that's where we hold ourselves back. And there's a really nice theme that I'm recognizing here as we're speaking. And a few things are coming out at me. Number one, being brave enough to borrow someone else's courage, even in that lesson, in that exercise you were giving your clients. Let's borrow someone else's humor. If you can't find the humor yet, let's find someone else's and try it on.
Yes.
And then being able to have the courage to make a mistake.
Yes.
And then also the other theme that I see coming up over and over as we're speaking here is, just because you figured it out once doesn't mean you're not going to fall again. Just because you found that success and stability and the happiness doesn't mean that another life lesson is going to come your way, and that you're just getting these tools that you can build on slowly. And I think that that's something you teach so beautifully with your sharing your personal story with your friends and your clients and your colleagues, is that we can all learn from your story so that we can kind of take those tools on for ourselves. So thank you so much for all you do. That's just such a big thing. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I can't imagine doing anything else. And it's my pleasure and my honor. And once you get to a place, just like you, once you get to a place of leadership and radical truth telling and changing and light working and inspirational and motivational speaking, like, you can't go back. So the trajectory is that we're just going to have to keep, expanding our audience, our platform, being even more visible, getting our voices heard even louder, losing people along the way. And I'm remembering a previous question a few back that you asked about people in friend circles, and I had to mindfully separate myself and distance myself from some toxic people in my life, including some of my family, who just in very vague or very definitive ways undermined my work or reminded me of things about me that I didn't like before. Like, this is the new me, and embrace it or don't. But I don't need to be reminded of the pains in the past in a way that brings me down. And so I had to set boundaries with people, the people I love, especially. And I think that's a very important lesson. And it's hard to do as a people pleaser, and people pleasing is a trauma response. And it was very hard for me to defriend my mother from Facebook or not call them as often because I could feel the energetically what it was doing to me. And so setting boundaries for yourself is really important.
And once again, the pain and the rising. It's so painful to do that. It's so painful to sever those relationships, but then realizing that you can be an even bigger and better you because of it. I know, I can see that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So before I ask our last question here this evening, I'd love for you to let us know where we can find you, how we can learn more about Roar. Where do we ask questions of you and get to know you better? What platforms are you on? Tell us all the goods. How can we find you?
Well, the easiest way is pashamarlowe.com. So it's PashaMarlowe.com. And there you will find links to Roar with Laughter, which has its own roarwithlaughter.com, and Roots and Springs, rootsandsprings.com. Like I keep thinking of creative, unique names, so I get the .com. And I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook under Pasha Marlowe. Like this is the benefit of a unique name.
Yeah.
So easy to find me. I'm local here, so gratefully neighbors with Taryn here in Maine. And
Yes.
so I am always the person, still do it, even throughout everything, every week, meet somebody new out to a coffee shop or a walk or a Zoom. I'm still wanting to make friends and establish community. So if you're local and want to hang out, I'm down for that.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So here are my last two questions. Pasha, what would you say your greatest superpower is?
My greatest superpower. Presence with somebody. When I'm with somebody, I want to hear their story. I want to listen. I'm intuitive in holding that space and allowing them the time to have their stories be told. And so, yeah, I think that might mean being a really good friend.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And a really good mom and a really good coach, all of the above. Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% second that. I think that is your superpower. I think I could think of a few more, but I think that's the best.
Thank you.
And then my last question to you is, if all of Roots and Springs and Roar and your marriage and family therapy all dissolved and all your Facebook posts and all the good that you've brought to everybody disappeared, and you could leave Jamie with one message, what would that be? What would be a message that gave him your deepest truth that you know for him to take with him?
Just snuggle with your people, play with your kids' hair. Don't ever pass up an opportunity to tell someone you love that you love them.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Well, we love you, Pasha. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insight and your experience with us. And I'm just so grateful to know you. Thank you.
Thank you, Taryn, for being amazing you and a sweet, dear friend and inspiration to me. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you to all of you who have joined us this evening. I'm so grateful to have you here. I hope that this resonated with you, and I hope that you can listen to Pasha and learn more about her online. And I look forward to seeing you and hearing you all next week on the next episode of the Business of Happiness podcast. Bye-bye.